Stephen Baskerville is Assistant Professor of Political Science at Patrick Henry College and past President of the American Coalition for Fathers and Children. He is a Fellow at the Howard Center for Family, Religion, and Society and a Research Fellow at the Independent Institute. He holds a Ph.D. from the London School of Economics and for many years taught political science at Howard University and Palacky University in the Czech Republic. Professor Baskerville is widely recognized as the leading authority on the politics of divorce, custody, and family courts. He is the author of Taken into Custody, The War Against Fathers, Marriage, and the Family. His writings on family and fatherhood issues have appeared in leading national and international publications, and he has appeared on national radio and television programs. He is a contributing editor to the journal In Search of Fatherhood. Let's welcome Professor Stephen Baskerville to the Global Freedom Report. It's good to have you with us, Professor.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Appreciate it. I know that you're over in Russia right now, and it's a little bit late for you, so appreciate your waking up in the early hours to speak with us.
No problem.
You hold a Ph.D. from the London School of Economics, and you taught political science in the Czech Republic. How have your experience in these countries helped you with your work today?
Well, that's a good question. I certainly get a different perspective. I teach international politics, so I'm very interested in what goes on. It's especially interesting seeing a post-communist society, because as many of the dissidents warned during the communist years, the communist countries, the totalitarian countries of the East, were very much warnings to the Western world of what may very well be coming our way there.
Can you tell us anything about how child support matters are addressed in either of those countries? I mean, have you looked into it at all? Are there differences in how they approach such matters?
No, I haven't really, to tell you the truth. I know that in the Czech lands and in Central Europe, their policies there are being influenced largely by the West, and the trends in the Western world, such as the United States, are being imported into those countries. In other words, the United States is the trendsetter very much in the world. We are on the cutting edge. And we are implementing, ironically, we are very much implementing the policies on divorce and family policy that were created during the Bolshevik years here in what was the Soviet Union.
What?
The other countries, the only other societies that ever legislated no-fault divorce before the United States in the 70s were the Bolsheviks after the Russian Revolution and the Jacobins after the French Revolution.
Well, what got you involved in this field? Did you have some personal experience that set you on this path, or was this just something that you thought that you wanted to get involved in, write books and articles on?
No, I found out from personal experience what was going on in the family courts of this country when I was summoned into the courts and when I was ordered to stay away from my own child.
Can you tell us a little bit about that? Here, we only got about a minute before the break, but
Well, I was like many other Americans and many other parents in the Western world. I was summoned into court. I was stripped of the right to see my children. I was stripped of the right to make decisions about my children. No explanation was given to me other than you were divorced. No rationalization, no accusation, no wrongdoing of any kind of legal wrongdoing was alleged against me. I was simply told that I had no right to see my children anymore and no right to make any decisions about my children.
And you had no recourse against such a dictate?
None whatsoever, as far as I could tell, other than spending large amounts of money on an attorney. And this is the experience now of literally millions of Americans and many other people in Western democracies.
So essentially it was from some personal experience, and it basically set you on a course that you wanted to find out more about it? And
yes.
Is that accurate?
That's right. I couldn't believe that this kind of that such a tyranny existed in the Western world. I couldn't believe that such an abrogation of basic constitutional rights was possible in the United States. And yet I found that it was not only possible, it was typical, and it was the experience of literally tens of millions of other American parents.
One would think that ensuring that fathers pay to support their children is a good thing. Why are we having this discussion today? What's wrong with the so-called child support system?
Well, you've put your finger on it. It plays upon our sympathy, our natural sympathy for abandoned children, and for those instances when that's the case, of course, child support is a good thing, and we have been, for hundreds of years, we have, since the Elizabethan Poor Law, we've required that fathers support their children. What's happening today in the child support system is entirely, vastly different, and it's highly deceptive and highly dishonest and highly cynical. It is not a system primarily geared toward forcing fathers to pay for children they have sired and then abandoned. It is a system for subsidizing family breakup. It's a system for paying mothers to divorce, for paying mothers to have children out of wedlock and to have children without fathers. It's a massive subsidy on divorce, and it is driving the divorce epidemic in ways that very few people who have not experienced it themselves can really realize. In other words, the typical father paying child support is not a man who has sired children and then abandoned them, or it's not even a man who has even agreed to a divorce in most instances. It's a man whose children have been forcibly taken away from him through literally no fault of his own, who is then forced, as Jed Abraham, an attorney in Chicago, puts it in his book, From Courtship to Courtroom. He says it's a system for forcing men to pay for the filching of their own children. And that's exactly what it is. In the typical divorce in this country, the father, it's no fault. He's done nothing legally wrong. His children are, in many cases, he hasn't even agreed to a divorce and given no grounds for a divorce. Yet his children are taken away from them. And then to top it all off, he's sent a bill, often for exorbitant amounts of money, for as much as 50, 60, 70, 80, 90% of his income can be taken. In some cases, we have documented cases where more than 100% of the man's income is demanded in so-called child support. It is nothing less than a system of plundering fathers, of stealing their children and then looting them for everything they have.
Now, let me get some clarification here. And I will tell you at the outset, I'm, to my knowledge, not a father. So I'm not in that boat, where I have that experience, and my perspective may be somewhat naive as a result. But you made a statement there. You said that it encourages divorce. How does it go about it? I mean, the implication is that women somehow do something or other to get a divorce, to get something from this corrupt system, because you're saying that it's going against the men, and I would agree. What do you mean it encourages divorce?
Well, the vast majority of divorces are filed by women, and they always have been. What the child support system does is it further encourages women to file for divorce. A woman, any woman, your wife or mine, can look at a child support schedule and immediately find out how much of a tax-free income, a windfall, she can receive simply by filing for divorce.
Pardon me. What did you call it? You said a child support, what?
Windfall.
No, you were saying there was some kind of a table or some kind of a
schedule, a child support table, which shows how much money she can get. In other words, she can simply plug her income into a table, into a calculation, and plug her husband's income into a calculation, and she can calculate immediately how much money she will get by filing for divorce. She can calculate, and it will be tax-free money that she can spend any way she wants to, tax-free, money that will be collected at gunpoint, if necessary, from her husband. So it's basically an open invitation for divorce. It's a bargain that the divorce industry makes with women, especially with mothers.
How do women even find out about something like that?
Typically, they find out about it through lawyers or through feminist organizations. In other words, there are a variety. The country is littered with women's centers, and they're funded oftentimes by the federal government. And these federally funded women's centers exist to disseminate information to women about the divorce system. And it's done quietly. It's done behind the scenes. It's not advertised openly. But it does. Women are informed by these women's centers, by attorneys, how much money they can make by filing for divorce. And it's an open invitation. I mean, basically, the divorce industry has made the following bargain with the mothers of America. If you file for divorce, you have everything to gain and nothing to lose. You will get the children. You will get generous child support. You will probably get the house. you will get complete monopoly control over all decisions involving the children. If the father raises any objection, if he tries to see his children, if he refuses to pay the child support, he can be jailed without trial. So you have nothing to lose and everything to gain by filing for divorce.
Okay, let take a moment. You wrote a book called Taken into Custody, The War Against Father's Marriage in the Family. Now, I infer from that title, okay, that you're saying that there is an intention to attack father's marriage in the family. From whence comes such intention? Where do you come up with a war being waged against them?
Well, that's essentially what the divorce system is. In many ways, marriage, we have this huge debate going on in this country about marriage. But in many ways, it can be reduced to one principle. Marriage exists largely to create fatherhood. Mothers are, the anthropologist Margaret Mead actually pointed this out. She said that motherhood is a biological fact. Fatherhood is socially constructed. And marriage, in many ways, is the mechanism that society has to create fatherhood. And by attacking marriage, we are attacking fathers. And it's no accident that the deterioration of marriage throughout the Western world has resulted not in mass motherlessness, but in mass fatherlessness. And so the divorce system is really a system for plundering, for looting fathers. Once the father is removed from the home, until the father is removed from the home, nothing really kicks in. Nobody earns any money. Nobody gets any power. As long as the father is in the household, everything, the status quo is maintained. Once the father is removed, that's the first principle of a divorce court. Remove the father. The first thing a divorce court does when a mother files for divorce, the very first thing they do is remove the father from the household. Everything then kicks in. The child support kicks in, the divorce proceedings kick in, the counseling, the custody evaluators, the whole entourage of divorce operatives begin to work. They suddenly then get power and they get money. But until the father is removed, they don't get anything. So once the father is taken away, everybody begins to earn money. And the child support system is not only a way of looting the father, it also creates a financial incentive to get the process rolling. Basically a huge bribe that is paid to mothers to file for divorce.
Okay. Now, I'm not naive enough to expect the government to act with integrity or anything of that sort. But doesn't the father have any rights? Don't fathers you say that they took me into court, they took my children, they didn't give me any options, I had no defense, nothing I could say. I find that very difficult to conceptualize. That there are no rights that are fundamental to the father, the man who was instrumental in giving birth to the child?
That's right. I write in my book, in fact, I say that fathers, with the exception of convicted criminals, there is no group in America that has fewer rights than fathers. In other words, even accused criminals have a right to a jury trial, to due process of law, to a presumption of innocence. Fathers have none of these rights in family court. They are presumed to be guilty. They can be removed from their home. They can be separated from their children. They can be looted for everything they have without even an accusation that they've done anything wrong, let alone a conviction.
What about constitutional considerations?
Constitutional considerations have virtually no place in family law. In fact, I have devoted an entire chapter to that, where I go down the Bill of Rights point by point, and I show that every article of the Bill of Rights is routinely violated in family courts. There is not even a pretense at observing the constitutional rights of parents, or especially fathers, in divorce courts.
What role does welfare play in child custody cases, if any?
Welfare plays a huge role. In fact, most of the machinery that deals with divorce was created under welfare. In other words, divorce is a way of spreading the welfare system to the middle class. And this is especially striking with the child support system. And this is also quite difficult to wrap your mind around, and I spent some time on the book on this. But the whole child support system was originally created for the welfare system, for low-income, unmarried parents. It was created as a way of recovering welfare costs from low-income fathers whose children were being supported by welfare. What no-fault divorce did was it expanded the welfare system, the child support system, from low-income welfare cases to middle-class divorce cases. And this is quite dramatic. It created a huge windfall for the whole child support machinery, for lawyers, for mothers, and especially for middle-class mothers. And the system is truly diabolical. I always say that if you know anyone that does not believe in a personal devil, just explain to them the child support system, because it is too evil to have come about by accident. It is a system in which not only mothers make huge amounts of money from the child support system, but so do governments. State governments in the United States make money for every dollar they collect in child support. In other words, every dollar that is collected in child support, that is routed through the child support collection machinery, collects money from the federal government. Now, think about the implications of this. If the state gets money for every dollar they collect in child support, it's in their interest to collect lots and lots of money in child support. In other words, it's in their interest to create large numbers of fatherless homes. The federal government creates an incentive system in which states have a positive financial incentive for creating as many single-parent homes as possible, because they will collect federal money for each single-parent home that exists in the state.
As far as I know, this was not around, certainly not even at the beginning of my lifetime. I'm like 55. When did the government first become involved with child support issues?
Well, it gradually happened, the welfare system, it gradually happened over the course of decades. What was truly revolutionary was in the 1980s, when the child support system was expanded, not simply from low-income welfare families, but from middle-class families, to middle-class families whose children were rendered fatherless not by welfare, not through out-of-wedlock births, but by divorce. In other words, the states found that they were collecting federal dollars. Because the states could collect federal dollars for each dollar of child support they collected, they suddenly found that by opening the child support system to middle-class families, they could create a massive windfall of federal money. In other words, before that, the states were collecting small amounts of federal dollars based on the child support they collected from low-income families. It wasn't very much money because most of the low-income fathers were making between $10,000 and $20,000 a year, if that. But by including middle-class divorced families, which began in the late 80s, they were suddenly able to reap payments from middle-class fathers making $50,000, $60,000, $100,000, $200,000, $300,000. And they found that they could earn huge amounts of federal money through this system. So states began balancing their books. They began earning revenue from the federal government by creating single-parent homes. This is absolutely astounding. We have a federal machinery, a federal incentive system that pays state governments according to how many fatherless children they have. The more fatherless children they have, the more federal dollars they get. Every taxpayer in America is subsidizing the breakup of of homes, the breakup of marriages through the child support system.
I've said this so many times. When money is the most important thing in your value system, you will do anything for money. You will lie, you will cheat, you will steal, you will kill. If we don't change the value systems, we're going to keep having this kind of corruption. How bad is the problem? Now, when I say the problem, I don't mean the problem of the corruption. I mean the problem as it's being put forth to the American people. Do we have any idea how many of these so-called deadbeat dads really are in the United States, as opposed to how many cases are being filed?
No, we really don't. The deadbeat dad phenomenon is entirely a product of the federal policies. Yes, you can find isolated examples of anything, of men abandoning their children. Again, that goes back to the Elizabethan Poor Law. And governments have taken care of that problem for centuries. This phenomenon of tens of millions of fathers on the child support system, supposedly owing billions and billions of dollars, we are told, is entirely a product of the federal government's policies. In other words, if you take a man's children, say you have a man earning $100,000 a year, you take his children, he's sitting in his own home, minding his own business. He's not violated any law, he's not committing adultery, he's not even agreed to a divorce. Yet his wife suddenly finds that by filing for divorce, she can collect 60% of his income. She can get $60,000 a year from him tax-free. Okay, so she files for divorce. He's suddenly required to pay $60,000 of his $100,000 salary as child support. He's not allowed to see his children. The strain of all this causes him to lose his job. He will not get a reduction in the child support if he loses his job. He will still owe $60,000 a year. He will not be able to pay. The federal government will say, oh, look at this deadbeat dad who can't pay $60,000 a year to maintain his own children. He's abandoned his children. And his children have been financially abandoned by him. And this will go up on the Federal Register as the federal accounting sheet as being $60,000 in unpaid child support. Well, this is nonsense. The government has simply stolen his children and used them as an excuse to loot him.
Ordinarily, I know family court is an administrative court, and that's why the Constitution doesn't apply. But ordinarily, when you are in some kind of a legal proceeding in an administrative court, there are processes that allow you to remove the case into a judicial court, which actually has rules of evidence and things of that sort. I know I asked this earlier, but I just want to ask a second time. Is there no way to remove a child support case into a judicial venue where the Constitution applies and the rule of law and all of that?
No. It can be brought up into higher courts, but the same family court, the same family law rules will apply. So no, it's not. There are cases where fathers are actually tried and given criminal trials for non-payment of child support. So it becomes a criminal case rather than a civil case. But in those cases, the fathers have no greater protection than they do when it's a civil case. And you have the irony of fathers thrown in jail without trial in what is supposed to be a civil matter. It's a complete mockery of anybody's idea of due process of law.
Let me ask you the question I'm asking my listeners today. The first half is easy. Should government be responsible for ensuring the child support is paid? If not, however, if we say government is too corrupt, then how would you recommend enforcing child support payment orders that are legitimate, I'm not talking about manufactured, but legitimate?
Well, it's very simple. The child support system should exist purely it should be enforced against men who abandon their children. That's what it's for. I mean, it was originally created under, again, the Elizabethan Poor Laws. It was created for, what were called bastards, who were left as burdens to the parish, the government to support. And fathers that do that I agree, they should be forced to pay. But that's what child support should be. It should be a system of forcing of men who abandon their children to pay for them. It should not be a system for forcing men to pay for the stealing of their own children. No man should have to be paid through the government.
Yeah.
When he's perfectly willing to support his own children in his own home.
Does your personal experience, what happened to you initially to get you on this course, does it in any way compromise your objectivity on the issue?
Oh, I don't think so. I mean, I've written numerous articles about this. I even had an exchange about it in a major political science journal. Several years ago, I wrote an article in a peer-reviewed political science journal. There was an exchange back and forth among several feminists, and I debated one another. But they were not able to answer any of these objections. It's very clear from that exchange, that debate, that this is what the child support system is. It is not for forcing men to be responsible. It is a way of plundering, looting people whose children you've stolen.
Well, now that you know that, is there anything you can suggest that fathers and would-be fathers can do to protect themselves, to ensure they're not victimized by this?
No, and I've thought about this for many years now. There's absolutely nothing they can do. The only thing you can do is not have children. Do not have children, in or out of wedlock. That's the only solution. It's the only way to avoid this. That's
a pretty self-destructive solution. Don't have children, ultimately your society dies.
This is precisely what is going on. Some people have conjectured that part of the cause of our declining birth rate in the Western world is fathers basically going on an impromptu strike because they do realize what can happen. Fathers understand that the moment a man has a child, he loses virtually all of his constitutional rights. He can be forced to pay decades of child support that exceeds his income, even if he plays by the rules, even if he has a child, even if he gets married first, even if he stays faithful to his wife, even if he obeys all of the rules, he can still have his children taken away from him and forced to pay extortionate amounts of child support, and he can very easily end up in prison for the rest of his life.
Amazing. Professor Stephen Baskerville, I want to thank you. We are out of time. Professor Baskerville has been my guest. If you'd like more information on his books, his work, and his views, and find out more about the entire issue, www.stephenbaskerville.net. That's Stephen with the PH, Stephen, Baskerville.net. Professor, thanks so much for being with us, and God bless you on your work.